So moving on here, Nate, to another Eastern Conference game on Monday night. The other one, we have a 3-1 series lead for Philly over Toronto, as Toronto did win that game 4 there. So we are headed to Philly game 5. We do have a bit of conversation here in terms of Embiid's health, right? That was a bit of a problem with that thumb that you mentioned at the top of the show with the lines there, mentioning how Embiid's talking about a sprained ligament, torn. Either way, we've got some issues, or at least something to monitor there. Do you think that the 76ers can still close this game out with either no Embiid or likely an Embiid that will be playing at least somewhat limited?
Maybe, but I don't really think they're going to cover 7.5 points.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be all over that if you see that up right now, and consider using it in some teasers for maybe 11.5 points for the Raptors. I don't think they're going down easy, man. The Raptors have played this team tough. I know they were blown out in games 1 and 2, but that's because they had to dedicate so many resources to Embiid, who is now not going to be the same player. Yeah, it's a torn ligament in his shooting thumb, I think. And he was, after dropping 31 plus in 3 straight games without Scotty Barnes in the lineup for the Raptors. He had 21 on 7 for 16 field goal shooting. Scotty did play 26 minutes, definitely was not full strength, but gave him another body to throw at Embiid. And he's wearing down now. I think, this is the second straight year. Didn't play through a torn meniscus last year.
Yeah.
I mean, throwing his toughness on the line, definitely throwing his weight around to try and keep his team going here. But I mean, this is on James Harden now. For the most part. And that's a scary thought if you are the 76ers and their organization, to say, oh, we've got the most notable playoff underperformer and a coach that has twice blown 3-1 leads, trying to not become the first to give up a 3-0 lead in playoff history. Doc Rivers now is 6-20 in his last 26 closeout games. I mean, I think he's a fine coach. I think Harden's actually played pretty well in his last few closeout games, and I'm taking him in player props, mostly because I think he's going to have to pick up the slack with Embiid not able to do what he's usually done. That being said, yeah, I mean, Toronto does a lot of things that give this team problems, mainly just hustles. And in game 3, Philly got out-rebounded by maybe 16. They were out-rebounded by 16 when they hosted Toronto in March, scored just 88 points. And they gave up 20 offensive rebounds to give up that 16 rebound discrepancy. And that was without OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. Toronto won that game. Toronto won 3 of 4 in the regular season. Toronto had much better numbers in the clutch after the All-Star break. I mean, they were both pretty good, but in terms of defensive rating and net rating, but Philly went 2-3 at home after the All-Star break in clutch situations. Toronto went 4-2 on the road, had the 3rd best defensive rating, 4th best rebounding rate. And Philly's a bad rebounding team, especially if Embiid is not at full strength. They're going to be a terrible rebounding team. And so Toronto, with toughness all over the floor, length, and guys just crashing from all over the place, can come at you in a variety of ways. I just don't see Philly rolling the way they did in the first 2 games of the series. In Toronto, only shot 8 for 34 from 3 in that last game and still won. They're bound to do a little bit better there. They limited free throws. We talked about coming into this series and outshot them 35-25 in game 3. I think everyone will point at Scott Foster being the reason for that. But I mean, all Scott Foster ever really does is give superstars absolutely no benefit of the doubt. So if Embiid didn't shoot that many free throws and Pascal Siakam shot a lot, it's just because he's going out of his way to say fuck you to the superstars. But he's not in any way tipping the scales of these series. It's Toronto won because they were hungrier and deeper and faster. And I would not be shocked if they win this one again. Shout out to anybody who listened to us just throwing out that it was plus 1,400 for them to force 6 when they got down. Right. Because now they're looking at potentially doing that. You can still get plus 650 for them to force 7, or plus 900 for Philly to let this go to 7, but win 4-3. So just some interesting ways to still look at this series, because I don't think it's going to be easy for the Sixers, especially if they let this one slip.
Yeah, I concur. I do agree with you about James Harden. I do agree about the 7.5 points. I think that's a little bit of a slap in the face to the team that the Raptors are, and the fact that Embiid is a bit hurt, and Scotty Barnes gave them 26 minutes. He even tweaked the ankle again at one point, had to come back out and went back in. And so, you continue to love the kid's toughness and think if he played 26 minutes in the last game, he's got to be available for 26 in this one. And hit, a Scotty Barnes at 80% and a Joel Embiid at 80%, let's say, or whatever you want to limit him to with that finger. Now we're talking about a Toronto team with their backs against the wall, love being dogs, love needing to scrap and fight back as they did this entire second half of this NBA season, and really a little bit before the break too. So Nick Nurse and company, Nick Nurse is kind of the opposite in terms of, games where he's either elimination or closeout games. They didn't make the playoffs last season, so he didn't really have to hurt his record. And it's really good from that championship run on and the year before as well, even with DeMar and company, in his first season there. So I love Nick Nurse's ability to outcoach Doc in this one, to be honest, to continue to figure out ways to, honestly frustrate James Harden on offense. And I think Harden at times is playing a bit into what Nick Nurse and company want him to do, which is dribble. Obviously, they would prefer the step back three, where he's just not hitting them at this point in his career. It doesn't seem like right now. He's lessened those to about 6 threes a game in the playoffs, which is decent. But he's also playing into into what they want him to do, which is dribble. And then as soon as you go, we've already got someone standing at the foul line waiting for you, because we don't really have the height anyway to meet you at the rim. We're going to stop you before you get there. And he's just doing his arm flailing stuff a little bit too much right now. So I don't know if he's got it in him to do that, but at least he still is, someone that you are happy to give the keys of your offense to, if Joel Embiid's not going to be the primary target, which is exactly where I don't, his game is going to be affected, is on offense, catching that ball in the post and then needing to go from there. That's not going to be what you see nearly as frequently in this game, I don't think. So while I wanted to really take Joel in a closeout game, in a game where if he had his full strengths, you could just say, all right, dump it down to him. Go ahead and get yours. Usage rate is super high. You expect those free throw attempts to continue to be about 11 or 12 for him, but it's just not what you rely on in this one. So I would look Harden assists and points. And then, 7.5 points. I don't know who's going to win this game necessarily, but I just cannot see the Raptors getting blown out like that in this one, as I think they will be a bit more prepared as they sort of, received a shock with Scotty Barnes going down right away in that first game. I think that was a really unplanned shock for them that led to them getting blown out in the first 2 games. And then also Tyrese Maxey playing way above his pay grade obviously has come back down to earth a bit. And I think you continue to expect that for a positive Raptors bet as well in terms of that plus 7.5.
Yeah, the money line's plus 265. I would say it's fair more in the plus 145 range for the Raptors. I'd say that's about how unlikely this win is. Closer to a toss-up in my mind. Because Embiid's not 100%, and it's not a shocker to look at his offensive rating, 110 in losses versus 123 in wins. Yeah. It was 92 in game 4 as he had 5 turnovers, and turnovers were the huge red flag we threw up before that game 4, saying, I think Toronto's going to force another one. And sure enough, once again, throwing the ball all over the place in the fourth quarter. Now, their last 2 games, the Sixers have the worst assist to turnover ratio, 0.6. So more turnovers and assists in the fourth quarter. And that's 21% of their possessions in the fourth are ending in a turnover. And that's against the team that I believe had the highest percentage of points off fast break points, loves to get out and run off your turnovers. If they continue to do that, they're in trouble. And it's going to be a little more predictable if it is Harden with that high usage rate. If it is Maxey, I don't like either of those guys to be super efficient, but I do like their props just because of I think the usage will be there. I don't think Embiid is going to be able to do what he normally does. And that's just going to galvanize a Raptors team that is the type of team that really to at least force a game 7 from getting down 3-0. Like this is in their DNA for sure. I'm excited to see what happens. I kind of hope just for the entertainment value that we go back to Toronto for game 6 and see how much longer this goes.
It would be fun, yeah. And the last thing I would say too is just mentioning that Matisse Thybulle coming back into the lineup where he wasn't able to play in Toronto does affect a few guys, specifically Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey. Danny Green was on the floor, obviously, in most of the Thybulle minutes in the last two games, really getting about 28 minutes or 30 minutes in both those games. Those minutes will go down, but you'll still see Tobias and Tyrese Maxey on the floor for the 38 to 40 that they've been playing. And those guys' stats went down a bit with Danny Green on the floor as he took 10 field goal attempts in game 4. He took 12 in game 3. And so, Tobias and Maxey were the ones who felt the brunt of those field goal attempts going down. Matisse Thybulle is not necessarily going to be pulling the same way that Danny Green was, or looking for his own shot the way that Danny Green was after a couple swings. So I think especially with Joel Embiid's usage probably dropping a bit and those guys both increasing because that's the effect that Thybulle has when he's on the floor with them. You might consider going back to their props, which hopefully will be a little bit lower than they were after games 1 and 2, where they both had really, really good offensive outputs.